We are a team. As storytellers and dreamers,
there is always magic to discover.
Once upon a time,
a Las Vegas showgirl
and a comedian magician
figured out that even with different perspectives,
our adventures and experiences together
are really just
one big
caper.
Would you like to start?
Yeah, I think I should start.
I think you should too.
Because, hello,
Hello?
it's National Women's History Month.
It is National Women's History Month. Okay.
This is going to be fun. So, I haven't looked up the whole background behind Women's History Month, but I do know March 8th, which was just a few days ago, is International Women's Day.
Okay.
Okay, and when I went to Russia when I was 16, that was when I found out about International Women's Day. In America, we had no idea.
Oh, they celebrated in Russia, but they
they celebrate all over the world.
celebrate or acknowledge, or what would you call it? It's not a celebration, right? Or
It is a celebration.
Okay.
They had a little dance party. I have pictures
really?
from that dance party.
That's cool. All right.
Yeah, there was just a little party in the dormitory and just celebrating the women.
That's really cool. I
Yeah.
like it.
Yeah. It's kind of like Mother's Day, but not.
Well, there's an example of how we, as people who live in this country, are unaware, like purposefully kept unaware of what's happening in the rest of the world.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah. Anyway, when we put out that Facebook post months ago, and we asked, our people, our friends, if a showgirl and a magician created a podcast, what would we talk about? And
Yes.
one of the things that came up, ironically, was from a former showgirl, former Las Vegas showgirl, was a friend of mine, and she said getting peed on by cats in magic boxes. As I was,
There's a reason. There's
Yes.
a longer explanation.
there's
Yeah,
but
it's
as I
coming.
was monitoring the comments, and I said, "Oh my God, this is hilarious that she got peed on by a cat in a magic box," because I had forgotten that she was one of the assistants to the magician in the show in Jubilee. And then she proceeded to. I said, "Oh my God, that actually happened." She goes, "Yeah."
That's Dirk Arthur, right?
Yes.
Yeah, we can say that because it's
can we?
researchably Dirk was in
Jubilee. Yeah. Well, there were maybe there were other ones in the beginning.
There have been over the years. Yeah, there's been a coming and going, but
When
Dirk had
when Dirk
represented
was
the
in
last.
there, he was in all three variety spots, so he got to do three separate tricks
Right.
or illusions, and so he chose. It's funny because from my experience, or what you've been telling me, is that the women in magic were mostly assistants, and they were tiny.
There's a reason, and
Yeah.
I'll explain.
But I'm going to just say, before you dive into that, the shortest girl in Jubilee was 5'8".
Right.
And the woman who said this, I don't remember her being that short. I think she was 5'10". So there's that. But I thought it would be fun to talk about kind of that subject of how women have been used in the past in shows, and sexism in entertainment.
I'm sure that is why the other showgirl who suggested this topic, I can absolutely understand why she was inspired to create a question or a prompt for us that had to do with the fact that you are a showgirl and I'm a magician.
Yeah.
There is a big difference between the kind of work that I do as a magician than what is traditionally associated with that, which we in the industry call box magic, which is kind of a dismissive term for that variety of magic. But these are the larger illusions that include making people appear or vanish. And I'm still, I'm fascinated, before we go much farther, that showgirls would be included in those effects for a couple of reasons. But it does remind me that Lance Burton also, not unlike Siegfried and Roy, got their shows started as being a variety act within a showgirl show. So in a showgirl review, it is traditional to have a little thing to mix things up, most often a magician. And that's how these magicians became very famous and staples in Las Vegas entertainment.
Yes.
Lance Burton being one of the biggest names ever to have come out of the showgirl world and into his own show. But I'm
yeah.
aware that Lance, while he did include, and we're not saying anything derogatory about Lance, but he did include
One of each.
a rainbow of flavors in his show, and I'll explain what I mean by that. Maybe you should. But it fascinates me that they were all showgirls, or dominantly showgirls.
Yeah.
And their height defies a lot of what the illusions require.
Right.
So by flavors, before we lose track of that, you can explain what I mean by that. That's not a very nice thing for me to say, flavors, but kind of.
So last year when I started Showgirls Life podcast, one of the very first people I interviewed was Eileen Ryan Scott, and she was a girl in Lance's show. That was one of her first jobs after she left the circus. So she was the only African American or woman of color in the show. And then there was a brunette, a redhead, a blonde. I think there was 6 of them. So I'm failing to... I can see the picture of Lance with the girls on the stairs in my mind. And I think there were 6 of them, but...
So it's interesting. And
Yeah.
I'm not sure... I like that Lance had a spectrum of people represented, but that means that every one of those people was a token of some kind.
Yes. Yes.
And therefore we can kind of consider that exploitation of physical characteristic.
Which is our next episode.
That's a different episode.
Yeah.
But that's going to make a nice segue between this and what we have to talk about next time we get together.
There is a method to our madness.
And and I suppose this is as good a place as any for me to invite you to interact with us about anything you hear us say on this forum.
So, why is it tradition? Because it was tradition for magicians,
Strategy.
mostly men.
It's
to use the
strategy that
women.
became tradition. Here's
Okay.
the reason. Number one, people largely say, we're talking 100 plus, 150 years ago.
Okay.
People are currently, on average, 6 inches taller
Right.
than we were that many years ago. And that's a evolutionary reasoning. It's theorized, but it's a reasonable theory. So people were smaller, and that included the magicians as much as the assistants. Magicians in a patriarchal society had a desire to appear to be much taller than they actually were when they were on stage. And one way to accomplish that is to have only shorter people join you on stage.
Don Arden did the same thing with Jubilee.
Right.
All of the principals were 6 foot tall.
Right.
So that they looked taller when they were next to the girls that were 5'8".
Right.
Yep.
Which is not a short person.
No.
5'8" is not short.
Nope.
But so that was the strategy.
Okay.
However, it became tradition for not only that reason, the drive to appear to be a more imposing physical person, but all of the illusions are designed, and I'm not disclosing anything terribly secret, I think everybody understands this, but all of the box illusions are designed to impossibly contain a person, whether it's vanishing or appearing. The illusion, the box, is designed to, in as compact a way, contain a person. The smaller the person, the easier it is to disguise that there is a person within the construction of this apparatus.
Right.
And the blueprints for those boxes were distributed, they were sold, they're still being sold There are updates to the design, but considering that people on average are 6 inches taller than they used to be, already we're talking about an uncomfortable apparatus unless it has been modified to accept an individual. But it is still very common to hire short people to fit in the cavity designed for a short person.
Okay.
And genetically, that generally also dictates that person is a female person.
Right.
So that is part of how it became a tradition. I am not excusing it. I am also not excusing the idea that the other part is sex appeal of a scantily clad female person on stage. And if a magician had the ability to make someone magically appear, it is reasonable to assume that person would use their magical ability to make an attractive person appear.
Right. Makes perfect sense.
Yeah.
Right.
So I'm not excusing it, but it is sexism. Now, the process of being a magician's assistant is bordering on abuse.
Okay.
There are derogatory terms for people who perform as magician's assistants. Very often I hear the phrase or term box jumper.
Ooh.
Uh-huh.
Okay. That sounds like that should be a male term, but...
A box jumper? Yeah, I get what you're saying.
Totally clean.
There is a fascinating documentary about magician's assistants, dominantly women, of course, called Women in Boxes.
Oh, yeah, I think you told me about it. Yeah.
And I think the story that you started this with is missing from that. Because it's the first time I heard it. It makes complete sense. So this apparatus that we're talking about to start the episode contains not only a woman, but a large cat. Probably a tiger.
Yeah, he had white tigers, yeah.
Yeah. And sometime we'll have to explore some of the stories from your show and the magic.
Yeah.
But nevertheless, there's exploitation happening there.
Yeah.
But it's also an uncomfortable position. It's uncomfortable to imagine, be in a box. Certainly look up that documentary called Women in Boxes. There are stories about how long people had to wait in their little hidey holes and falling asleep, taking a little nap.
Really?
Being off cue because they weren't awake. Yeah, fascinating. But dominantly women who were put in that position. I am seeing an evolution in magic, and there's landscapers outside, so forgive noise. I'm realizing, but
no more recording on Wednesdays.
Yeah, there's an evolution in the industry, and I am seeing a great number of very empowered female magicians. I am seeing an impressive number of trans magicians. We have always had gay magicians, but they are more comfortable being out. In fact, in recent years, I'd say it's about 10 years, we've become more aware of gay magicians. It's my personal position that it's none of your business. I don't have to tell people I'm straight, so I don't know why gay people have to tell people
they're gay.
Yeah. That's interesting to me. But nevertheless, it's becoming a considerably more diverse community, and I'm proud of the community because it was always a boys' club. To include the actual magic clubs on a worldwide level scale, all of those forbade women from being members of the club, or in many cases entering the sanctity of the house. So that has changed too. Those rules are no longer in place, and we are celebrating as a community, global community of magicians. We are celebrating the female magicians who are kicking ass. They are actually giving these old codgers a run for their money.
So, why, and this might be a question for the next episode of the exploitation of the female in shows, but do you think this sexism happens because of systematic fear of the power of women? If they're kicking ass now, they could have kicked ass hundreds of years ago too, and they might have been
In other
if
industries,
they were not oppressed.
in other industries, I will tell you that I would absolutely say that. However, and this is something that you and I have never talked about.
Yeah,
One
this
of-
is a new conversation.
One of my
Thanks
one
for
of my
being here.
personal perspectives is something I've never told you. But it has
Wait,
to do.
is it going to be a deal breaker?
No,
Okay.
no, not at all. I think you'll totally agree with me. It is adult subject matter, so I should probably disclose that off the top. Nothing that should require me to bleep it a whole lot, but
Bleep, 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 bleep.
bleeps happen. Entertainment, the construction of a good show. We have talked about that subject endlessly. What does
Yes.
it take for a good show?
Yes.
How do you appeal, as a show, we have a show, it's not going to be everybody's flavor. That's impossible,
Right.
right? So in order to make a successful show, you try to put your art into it, and your passion and your heart and your education, all of the things. But part of what is necessary to create a product that can help you create the next product is success in the box office.
Okay.
You've got to sell tickets. There are formulaic ways in theater that we have more or less determined to be the standard for construction of a show.
Okay.
And that's based on data collected over several centuries. But we're talking about the 3-act structure and coming to a resolution and that kind of thing. So the most effective shows understand that the show experience for the customer is sex. There's foreplay and there's an orgasm at the end. That's generally like the construction of a successful show. And there's a lot of interplay as we go through that process, but essentially we start from A and try to get to Z
Okay.
in the construction of a show.
Okay.
So, sexism exists in the entertainment industry, but the construction of the show is aimed at the broadest possible market. You're welcome to disagree.
I do
we
disagree.
disagree all the time.
Why is it that the female has to take the fall? Why is it that Janet Jackson was the one that got in trouble for her costume malfunction, not the man? And then he later apologized publicly.
That was flat out sexism.
Absolutely.
And yeah, I totally agree
Why
with that.
is it the exploitation of the female? So, our next topic.
There's exploitation is kind of the name of the game, but you're talking about contemporary media. I'm talking about theater, which are they're two different things.
Yeah, and I think it's varying degrees and different. Like even film has its own ickiness,
Yeah.
and then you have your theater, and then magic doesn't fit in theater, but it does.
There are theatrical magic shows. Most magic is kind of variety, I suppose.
Okay, yeah.
So it's difficult to tell that whole story. I know of a few magicians who can tell a whole story as a variety act, and that's an art form of itself. But
Okay. Yeah. Well, it's nice to hear it's changing.
it is evolving. I
Yeah.
think. Yeah.
It's not happening fast enough. Of course, we're all very impatient.
No, we're
for
late
it.
on everything.
Yeah.
Which
And you
is a
say
shame.
we as humans.
Yeah.
Okay. When I was doing research for this, actual episode, I was appalled by some of the things I was finding on the Google. And there was an article of 27 women that were speaking out against sexism in the film industry. And the stories, it's appalling. Of course, they came after the MeToo movement hit.
Mm-hmm.
So, and some of them were those women that were, speaking out against whatever his name is. And it's just still sad because some of it is ageism that plays into that sexism bit. Reading about these things, and I might just link that because it was eye-opening, because certain things for me don't feel like sexism, and we were talking about this a little bit. I think it was last night when you were talking about the woman who grew up in a commune and was sexually abused by her father.
2 nights ago, yes, but...
And she had no idea that wasn't normal.
She didn't know it was wrong.
Or wrong,
Yeah.
Right. And
she did know it was uncomfortable. She did instinctively know, I
Something's
don't
not
like
right there.
this.
Yes. Yeah.
But she didn't know that anything objectionable was happening.
Yeah.
That's just tragic.
So, because I was a showgirl, I was a topless dancer in Las Vegas.
Mm-hmm.
And it was by choice. I was never, ever forced. Fluff was our company manager. At the time, she was 82-year-old firecracker. So she was...
Yeah, I wish I knew her.
Never mess with Fluff. Oh, you would have loved her. And Diane, who was also had been in the show years earlier. So we were led by women. And these women were not, in my mind, like madams. They weren't leading us into this male-dominated situation where we had to sell.
Concubines.
Yeah, no. It never felt like that. It was always a choice if you wanted to go topless. And they asked me very first day of audition. And then they asked me again a few more times. And
understandable.
because I wanted to be a principal dancer, I chose to go ahead and be topless. And it was really no big deal. Like, societally, the nipple needs to be free. I get so mad these days when I see men running down the street topless. And I'm just like, why can't women do that? But that's a whole other topic. I keep bringing stuff up.
That may come up again.
I know it will.
We've been in Europe together, even. We've been in Europe.
Nipples on billboards.
Yeah, it's on billboards. So it's... I'm sorry to interrupt you, but the spectrum is there in terms of evolution and culture and all the different... And this is a topic that we discuss all the time. But I have a friend who is right now in Africa, still fighting against female genital manipulation or mutilation.
Mutilation.
That's still a battle.
Yeah.
And,
so we're not.
So as disappointed as we are in our own culture.
Yeah. It's worse in other places.
Yeah.
I know. I understand this. I do know this. I do. I wish for women to be able to take their power back. And, it's unfortunate that right now we are in a patriarchy and the male is dominant because he has no qualms about using force, which I think is why rape culture is such a big deal here.
Oh, my
so
God.
we're not even going to talk about that today.
Yeah.
But I want to wrap this up with the juicy bit.
Oh, are we getting to that point? Gosh,
Yeah.
I feel like we're just getting started on the subject.
Well, we're going to talk about exploitation
Okay.
in our
all right.
next episode.
That
So
makes sense.
I did this research, and I remember when I was in Jubilee, and I have heard the stories. I've read the books. Goldie Hawn wrote her book, and how she was chased around the desk by a producer.
How did Goldie Hawn, of all the celebrities, come up twice in our program?
I guess I look up to her.
That's cool. That's interesting.
I would love if you have a connection to Goldie Hawn. I really want to interview her because she was fired by Don Arden. So before she went into Laugh-In,
right.
she was a showgirl. or a dance. I don't know if she was ever a dancing nude. She might have been a bluebell, but
She may be a person who doesn't want to relive that or talk about it. You know,
Yeah.
you've had that experience before.
Yes.
People don't want to go back.
Yeah, but I read her book years ago. The lotus grows in the mud or out of the mud. I apologize. We have the noisiest neighbors upstairs. When they moved in, it was like, yeah. I need to write more letters to their angels. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. So
You
she's
can hear
hanging
that.
something.
Today's decorating day apparently upstairs.
We can
We have
wait-
landscapers
wait
on
here.
decorating
Yeah.
day.
Okay, so Wednesday's not a good day to record. Let's just. I'm gonna do it.
Do what?
My ghost running
Oh yes.
idea.
I'll build you the wheel with feet.
Oh, it's gonna be a wheel. I
Why
like
wouldn't
that better. I was like
That works too, probably.
running. Hopefully she's done.
We may have a break. So we
Goldie
were.
Hawn came up twice.
Yeah.
Lotus grows in the mud.
Yes.
There's something about her. I've always looked up to her, and
That's great. I like
Yeah.
it.
Yeah,
I think
so-
she's still in this state.
you said that. I had no idea.
Yeah.
Yeah. So maybe I'm gonna start hanging around Vale. See if I run into her.
We can arrange it. I mean, you've learned, as I learned quite a while ago, that people are reachable.
I have 2 on my list.
Yeah, we
Yep.
can get a hold of
I
people.
have at least 2. 2. Anyway, so I had read her story that she was chased around the producer's desk because, of course, you know, there's the what is it? The casting couch is that story.
That's the term.
The term, and it still exists in Hollywood, supposedly. I had heard that. I was a young girl. I was probably 21, 22, maybe. And one of the other girls in the show came to me, and she said, "Hey, I have a friend who's looking to cast a movie. He's looking for ethnic types." And I was like, "Okay. What's it involved?" She goes, "Oh, you're just gonna go have coffee with him." I said, "I don't have to go out like to have sex with him or anything, right?" She's like, "Oh, no. Just go to like the cafe at his hotel, and just you'll meet with him, and he'll see if you're a good fit. You know, bring your resume, your headshot, blah blah blah." So I go and I pretty myself up, and I go and I have coffee tea with this man who I've never met before, and I have no idea who he was, honestly. I knew he wasn't like a famous director, but he might have just been a casting director of some sort. And he was at least 55. He was older. He had whiter hair. And so we had our little meeting, and he asked why I was interested in doing a movie. And I was like, oh, well, I mean, if Penelope Cruz can be an actress, maybe I could too. This is about the time when she did Vanilla Sky. So I was like, I thought I'd, give it a try. And he just kept saying, well, I'd like you to come up to my room. And I said, no, I'm not going to go up to your room. I heard that wasn't part of this meeting. And he said, no, I really would like to see you in my room. And I was like, no, not going to go. And so I didn't, and I never heard from him again. And that night I went to my friend and I said, look, this dude tried to get me up to his room. What did you get me into? And she's like, oh my God, I had no idea. I'm so sorry. I had no idea that was going to happen. So I don't ever fault her for that. But the fact that men think that's okay, like, why would I need to go up to your room? I mean, there's women in that article that I read that they were requested to show up to the audition in a bikini. There was no sex scene, no nude scene, no reason for them to be in a bikini, except that men are...
Yeah, even after the awareness and movements of the last span of time, it is still going on, especially in Hollywood. All of
Yeah.
the stuff that you're talking about is still happening.
That's why I never
Even
want to
though
be an actress.
People are more or less the reason we have a death penalty, for example, is to deter people from taking the actions that would cause them to be
Yeah.
killed
Right.
under the death penalty.
Right.
That's not working either, of course, but the MeToo movement and convictions of predators who have functioned exactly the way you're describing in Hollywood, that's still not a
Yeah.
deterrent enough that it's gone. It's still happening right now.
I don't get it. I really don't get it.
The
I
casting-
remember what you went through as that was rippling through our lives. Like, have I ever, like,
Well, there
as
was
a male, you go, like, have I ever done something that could have
absolutely
put someone in that situation, So that's scary too, because
It's maybe not a bad thing that people are forced to take stock of their lives and that kind of thing.
Yeah, I mean-
that brings up the whole subject of can people change, and we don't have to go there
No.
now.
no.
But
I just want to share that juicy bit because I've not
that's
actually ever shared
just
that.
heavy. It's kind of
Sorry.
That's heavy. Sorry.
It didn't
I'm
really
sorry
affect me that much. Just like, oh, typical. So this is why I am so feminist and against. It's just an abuse of power in my mind. Is just that's why sexism in any field in this world, any ism is an abuse of power. So that's we'll get into the exploitation in the next episode. So I don't
All
know
right.
that this isn't a resolution at all. This will keep coming up, but now you know where we stand.
I will tell you that we're doing our best, and again, for those of you who are not sighted or just listening to this podcast, I am often nodding my head in agreement, but we are going to do our best to avoid anything that could be considered triggering. We will talk about sensitive things, because I don't shy
Yeah.
away from having discussions about sensitive topics, but we're going to do our best to not get into anything that's terribly triggering, and I'm sorry if we have already created that experience for you, but it's important to discuss, and I feel we can weigh in as being entertainers. We're certainly not the only entertainers in the world willing to discuss the topic, but I think that a lot of the people who are interested in whatever we are up to, they could kind of find our observations and experiences interesting. So that's why we have this podcast in the first place.
Yeah. And one thing I'll say about the triggering is it's probably triggered people 100 times already in the last 7 episodes.
It occurs to me that I am sensitive to sensitive people, and I apologize if we've managed to give you an ugly feeling, but
I suggest just getting help. Go find a nervous system healer or learn the EFT or NLP. Find a practitioner that can help you to resolve that, because those are just, the triggers are held in our bodies, and they will come up. They will keep coming up. And yes, I'm not trying to purposely poke people and trigger them. I'm absolutely not. These are things that should be discussed for change, to produce change in the world that is so imbalanced at this point. But again, I will go back to, we are not responsible for other people's happiness. And if they don't like what they hear, they can just not listen to the show. So,
I agree.
okay. I'm just going to put that out there too, because I'm not going to bend over backwards.
I understand that.
Okay.
Yeah.
Yes.
You have been doing better with not using words that we have to bleep.
Yeah, it's hard. It's really hard.
I totally get it. We're passionate people.
Yeah. But there are other words, too.
There are.
Yeah.
There are.
So,
Thank you so much.
thank you. Next time.
We can't keep doing this without you. Give us just a little bit of your time by subscribing, sharing, rating, or talking about One Big Caper with someone else. We truly appreciate your support.
We want to hear your stories. Visit onebigcaper.com to get to know us even more.
This episode of One Big Caper was published in 2022. All rights to broadcast in whole or in part are the property of Gazellas Productions, LLC.